This is AgilitySync, which is our integration platform. We mostly do ERP and e-commerce integrations. We have a few others in there. Today is going to be on QuickBooks Desktop integration with Zoho CRM. Okay, so here we go. Let's dive in. So your systems won't play well together. You thought it would be easy to connect Zoho and QuickBooks. QuickBooks Desktop is a 30-year-old file database. You may have tried to do it yourself. Maybe you thought you could just double enter things, but obviously it gets pretty overwhelming. Instead, records are named incorrectly. They don't exist in both systems. Things fall through the cracks. Harping on your team to pay more attention. Yeah, those all sound like problems. How can we help your team? The AgilitySync platform, like I said, tell you what AgilitySync is, go through some overview of QuickBooks integration. We'll show you how to plug into more than just QuickBooks, like an e-commerce system. We'll go through our onboarding process, live demo, Q&A, ready, go. So AgilitySync is ZBrains' first product, which is an integration platform. ETL means extract, transform, and load. It's one of those tech terms for integrate. So connects Zoho to QuickBooks, and I'm using the term Zoho in a broad way because we've connected to many Zoho apps. We do work with both desktop and online. For desktop, we work with any version that uses the web connector, though we know that the UK version uses the web connector. I'm not sure about the Australian version, but we really only tested this with the US and the Canadian versions. AgilitySync provides many standard integration features to make your life easier. I'll go through what those are. It's deployed, hosted, and supported here in Pasadena. Initially, it was built by our subsidiary company, but all the support has transferred now over to the US, all the deployment and support. It's always been hosted on Amazon. Those resources are managed here in our Pasadena office. AgilitySync features. Okay, so customized mapping. We have a mapping interface to allow you to change which fields get mapped together. There's some fields that don't or shouldn't get mapped together that have different field types and things like that. We do historical data migration. There's a difference between integration and migration. Integration is syncing things moving forward. Migration is migrating historical data prior to integrating. We have a real-time sync log, so when you are syncing, it'll tell you all the successes and failures. It will email you with the failures. We can change the sync direction, whether temporarily or permanent. We have a sales rep mapping interface, and we have a chart of accounts mapping that is really for ERP integrations, accounting integrations. We also have sync criteria or filters, kind of like making a list view in Zoho CRM, where you can change the filtering there. We have the same ability in the integration platform. So if you don't want to sync all accounts, maybe you only want to sync accounts that are customers, that's a great example. What else does AgilitySync do? So yeah, Zoho apps, CRM, books, subscriptions, inventory, creator. Yeah, a lot of Zoho apps we've connected to. E-commerce apps, I'll go through those. That's WooCommerce, Magento, and Shopify. Other apps like TaxJar, PandaDoc, things like that. I'll go through those. So, yeah, I already rattled these off. See, I know them offhand. So CRM, books, creator, inventory, subscriptions are the main ones we've connected to. E-commerce apps, there we go. WooCommerce, Magento, Shopify. Other integrations. So TaxJar, that's for calculating sales tax. PandaDoc, I'm guessing most of you are familiar. Google Drive, Dropbox, eBizCharge, that's a payment gateway. Those all fall under our AgilitySync product line. Onboarding process. So speak to a consultant and get an assessment. Yeah, that's pretty important because sometimes what you're thinking that you want to use the integration for or the data flow you might be thinking of might not be the best way, or you might just be asking to do something that's not feasible. It might blow your API call limit with Zoho. So that's what an assessment's for, is we actually look at your process and your data flow, and we recommend we make a recommendation of what's feasible and what will also work for your business. Okay, we'll deploy it for you. We have a white glove service that's deployment and data migration if you need that data migration. And once all that is deployed and tested, and you agree, yep, this is good, then we make a switch to make it go live, and that's when you start syncing. So we have some monthly, this is about pricing, just in case you're trying to head some of these questions off at the pass. So bronze, silver, gold, platinum. This is basically the number of connectors. So this is a 3-connector package that includes accounts, products, which are items in QuickBooks, quotes and sales orders. This is silver plus vendors and purchase orders. And we can also, you can also buy per connector if you like. It's 25 per connector plus the deployment. This is an annual package that actually includes deployment, and it's based on annual. And this also can be bi-directional. So we have a bi-directional sync on every module. In case you're wondering, we also do custom modules. That was some of the stuff over there on the Platinum side. We can sync custom modules. Okay, live demo. Joy. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape on this, and I'm going to switch over to my demo Zoho CRM account, and I'm going to show you invoices here. I'm going to click on this one invoice, and you can see I do have an account here, okay, and I also have some products. So this one was already synced. So when we sync transactions, we also have to sync the accounts and the products, right? In QuickBooks, you can't have an invoice without a customer and some items, right? So those we absolutely have to sync in order to sync any transaction. And on a purchase order, it's the vendor, not the account. I'm going to go ahead and just clone this one. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change some of the quantities on here. Let's just change this to like a 10 and maybe a 20 on this. So that's changing the prices and things like that. So this customer's already all set up. I'm going to go ahead and let's call this invoice number 4. Okay, I'm going to hit save. This is a regular Zoho CRM prompt. It says my inventory is out of stock. Thank you for telling me. So there you go. It's going from Zoho CRM to QuickBooks Desktop. I'll show you a little bit about the admin panel after this. So now I have a remote desktop session open with my QuickBooks. In case you're wondering about hosting, okay, QuickBooks Desktop is a Windows application, so we really don't care where your Windows is located, whether it's in your office or on Right Networks or a variety of those other hosting environments, because the bottom line is QuickBooks runs on Windows, right? We just use remote desktop. We use the QuickBooks web connector, which is made by Intuit. To get that, you can hit File and Web Services, okay, and you can download the web connector directly from the Intuit website. I'm going to go ahead and hit Update Selected here. So this is part of deployment, is us deploying this integration file here that basically says where your Zoho is and how it authenticates and where your QuickBooks is located. And so it's running right now. In case you're wondering, we can auto run this every X number of minutes. Or if you want to have ultimate control, you put it on your accountant's desktop and they hit run whenever they're ready. Okay, but this is a standard QuickBooks functionality at this point. All we do is we deploy this file right here, the application that's called a QWC file, QuickBooks Web Connector file. And so it's running. Takes a couple minutes to run. By the way, the web connector runs, for all you Windows geeks out there, it runs as an application, not a service. It can run in the background, but if the server is restarted, you have to open up the web connector. And it's still running in here. I'm going to go ahead and minimize it. You can see this invoice already came in that I just made for 25 grand. Okay, and there's the customer. The customer was already in there. You can see that that invoice already came in. Lots of data flows. There's you know, from Zoho to QuickBooks, there's from QuickBooks to Zoho, and there's bi-directional, and that's per module, right? You might say, hey, I want my purchase orders to come from QuickBooks, but I want my invoice, sales orders invoice, to go into QuickBooks. So that's the type of data flow that we're talking about when we do an assessment. At some point, that's gonna finish, but this is already, the one I wanted to show you is already done. So this is a QuickBooks here. This is 2017 Premier, but again, we can work with any version of QuickBooks that uses the web connector. And Intuit supports like current version and a few years back. So that's their supported platform matrix. You can go to the Intuit website to see exactly all the versions that are supported by Intuit. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the Agility panel. So when you sign up, you get access to this panel here, and so you can see all of the different modules here. So let's see if we have So customers, products, invoices, that's what's configured here. Deals in the CRM, we sync those to jobs. We think of all those different kinds of items in QuickBooks, like assembly items and services and sales taxes, all that. Okay, it's every type of item. Estimates, sales orders, invoices, purchase orders, sales receipts, credit memos. Those are like negative invoices when they're in Zoho CRM, but they're credit notes in Zoho Books. So we sync all these things. The logs here, let's go ahead and click on invoices, and you can see that there was this last invoice here that I did sync successfully right there. This is in case it fails and you need to fix there might be an issue with the data. So if it's not a success, it would show an error message here and it would tell you what's wrong, and then you'd have to fix it and then resync. This info here shows the actual payload, which is the actual data. And then this record URL, this is the Zoho record URL. Oop, I'm not logged into that Zoho. That's my production Zoho. So this actually knows which record it has the URL of the Zoho record, and it'll open up your Zoho and take you to that record. You do that if there's like an error message, a problem with your data, something like that, you need to fix it. You just click, opens it right up, you fix it, and then you hit resync. The mapping file, I kind of glazed over that, apologies. So this is your mapping interface here where you can decide which fields get mapped to each other. You can also assign static values or hard code values. Hopefully you don't hit the reset button there. If you add a custom field, it'll be in here. You can see it's pretty extensive. So that's the mapping interface per module. The filtering here, I don't think I've added any filters, but this is kind of like the criteria builder in Zoho CRM where you might say, like invoice or customer type is, account type is customer or something like that. So I might find in here, maybe I don't want to sync draft invoices or something like that, or future dated invoices. So I might say status, isn't draft, something like that, right? And so then it would skip all invoices where the status was draft. So you can use the criteria, it's that and/or functionality there, pretty similar to what's in Zoho CRM. Settings here, so this is kind of part of setup that you would have to go through this, but this is where the QuickBooks file is located, right? The actual QuickBooks database. This is your Zoho authentication. We're still using the auth token. That's going to be switched out by the end of the year. This is where you download the QWC file that you have to attach to QuickBooks, the QuickBooks web connector. That's in essence, it's an XML pointer that says my Zoho is here and my QuickBooks is here. That's what a QWC file is. The sales rep mapping. This is, okay, looks like I have two users, they're both named me, but this is where you decide who the salesperson is in QuickBooks versus the username in Zoho. That is for not just, on invoices decide who the salesperson is, but it's also for record ownership in Zoho. So if you're pulling from QuickBooks, putting into Zoho, it's important to have the right owner of the record because that decides who can see that particular transaction. Okay, so some inventory item settings. This is if you're going to hard code the GL account. We can also just map a field for the GL account. That's more standard today, I'd say, so that it has the right revenue, COGS, and inventory account. This is where you go with your sync directions. So we have, Zoho to QuickBooks, QuickBooks to Zoho, and bi-directional in there. That's per module. Okay, these are for different types of items where you're configuring different options for different types of items. So getting a little more complicated there. And then this last piece here is where you decide where your email for your audit log goes. And I think that's it. That's a crash course in AgilitySync for QuickBooks. I'm going to pause there. I know I go really fast. I apologize. I got to keep you people awake. So I'm going to pause there for questions.
Great. Thanks very much, James. We had a couple questions come in during the webinar, and of course, I'm seeing some others pop in too. Just in order, does it integrate with QuickBooks Desktop hosted solution through Right Networks?
Yes. Yep. All of them are just Windows, but yeah, we've worked with Right Networks many times.
Okay, great. Another question kind of shooting off that is, we've had a past situation where Right networks had problems with a software app that we wanted to use. Will this pose problems with them specifically?
No, because we're not using, so there's three ways to integrate with QuickBooks. One's the web connector. One used to be called the Sync Manager. Actually, that one got deprecated. And the only other one left is to use the SDK, which is making your own app. We don't do that one, and it's for that exact reason. We don't want to support your QuickBooks. We don't want to maintain this middleware file, right? So we use the web connector, though it'd be a little bit more limited in making a fully on custom program. We don't open up that big can of worms with modifying your QuickBooks. We just use the web connector, which is maintained and supported by Intuit.
Great, okay. And with regard to invoice numbering, is it possible to set ZBrains software to pull the invoice number based on the last invoiced using QuickBooks?
So if you're coming from QuickBooks to Zoho, it's going to get the QuickBooks invoice number and slam it in that field I show you. I was going from Zoho to QuickBooks, and Zoho requires you enter a subject in that particular field, and so that's why I entered it there. But if you're going from QuickBooks to Zoho, yeah, we're just going to map the invoice number in that field, so you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, great. We have another one here. If you use Vertex for tax calculations in QuickBooks, how is that handled if an invoice is created in Zoho and then synced to QuickBooks?
I don't know Vertex, I know Avalara and TaxJar, but I'll tell you the way QuickBooks normally handles sales tax is it adds a line item called a tax item. And so that's one of the item types that we sync, are tax items. So when it gets to Zoho, it's going to have that same sales tax item on it.
Okay. Will the accounts receivable payments show in Zoho once a customer payment has been recorded in QuickBooks?
So that's a custom module in Zoho CRM, okay? In Zoho Books, it's a payments received as a standard one. So if we're syncing Zoho Books to QuickBooks, yes, we can sync payments. If we're talking Zoho CRM, we have actually created an extension for payments that we just add in, and then we would be syncing with that module. But according to Zoho CRM, there's no such thing as a payments module, so we have a little extension for that. So that'd be one of those add-ons in the Platinum category that I talked about. Short answer is yes.
Indeed. Okay. How does syncing estimates from QuickBooks to Zoho work?
The quote, sales order, and invoice in Zoho are all pretty similar, right? They have pretty much have the same fields on them. Just one says quote, one says sales order, one says invoice. So there's a standard quotes module of Zoho CRM, and that if you're doing quoting in Zoho, okay, that would be a good example of pushing quotes in. I showed pushing invoices in, but again, they're all very, very similar in the structure and process. So just like I ran the web connector there and it synced an invoice, instead a quote in Zoho CRM would be synced to an estimate in QuickBooks. The packages, the bronze, silver, and gold, are kind of set up for different business models. The invoice, the bronze one, is set up for somebody who's fully operating in Zoho. That means quote, sales order, and invoice, or maybe it's just quote and invoice. But that's where they're pushing invoices to QuickBooks from Zoho. The silver package is for companies that are going to push a quote into Zoho or a sales order into QuickBooks from Zoho, and they're going to get an invoice back out. Right, so that's more like, hey, I'm going to sell something, and then it's going to be fulfilled in QuickBooks, and then once it gets shipped out, whether it's product or service, okay, then I pull the invoice back out of QuickBooks. So that's the silver package, and then the gold package is more for like a broker or even somebody who's doing like projects where they have sales orders, but they also have purchase orders. So they may convert a sales order to a PO and also get the PO into Zoho, so they want to see the supply side and the demand side, so to speak. So that's the gold package.
All right, super. And is there a cost for deployment on the monthly plans?
There is, yeah. There is a cost for deployment. I think we could send you that price, but the bronze is, I'm going to try and get this off the top of my head. The bronze is $1,400. The silver is $2,800, and the gold is $4,200 as a one-time fee, plus the monthly on the subscription, right? But the annual includes deployment.
Yeah, so that's good to know. Let's see here. I have a Mac. Can I get the web connector too?
I'm sorry, Mac. Well, you cannot. I'm sorry.
We are sorry about that. It's just one of those things. It's only our version of the app only works with Windows.
Yeah, the web connector. I don't think the web connector is still available for that Mac version. I haven't checked in a little while though, but last I heard.
Okay. Does the CRM show outstanding invoices for each customer, if any?
So if you have that payments module, that extension that we offer, and you're syncing payments, we also get to sync the balance of the invoice at that point. And outstanding meaning balance not equal to 0, right? So if you have that payments extension, you can do that.
Okay. And how does this work with QuickBooks Online?
Pretty much the same way, except you don't have the web connector to deal with. It all just runs in the background.
All right. Does the monthly plan support bi-directional sync too?
That is a good question. I think there is for the monthly plan, there is a 50% upcharge for bi-directional. On that, the upcharge is only for bi-directional on transactions, not on master file like accounts, contacts, and items.
Alrighty. Got a few more here. I saw that AgilitySync showed compatibility with Google Drive. Does that include Sheets and other Google apps?
It's mainly just the drive and whatever. So we're we're creating folders with that. So you can make a folder for every account and store the deal folders underneath that. We can also copy from other folders, like if you have a set of templates that when the folder's created, you want to make sure go in there. So we can customize that a bit, but that's in essence how that's working, is it's either making empty folders or copying from a templates folder with documents in it.
All right. We would like to really commit entirely to the Zoho module, including Zoho Books. Is there a good source for detailed comparisons between QuickBooks Desktop and Zoho Books as far as advantages and disadvantages between the two?
I'm not sure what material's out there, but I'll tell you just what I know off the cuff. I think the QuickBooks inventory for desktop is stronger than Zoho inventory, but it's not web, right? It's not in the cloud. Zoho's payroll is only for California and Texas, and there's no fixed asset depreciation. So those are two, I'd say three big ones. Is Zoho inventory is pretty good, but it's not as robust as QuickBooks Advanced Inventory. Okay, but ultimately it comes down to these two things, which are payroll and fixed asset depreciation. Those things QuickBooks Desktop has, and Zoho does not have fully yet. Payroll is only for California and Texas, and there is no fixed asset depreciation at all.
Okay. Does AgilitySync stay updated with QuickBooks version updates?
So with the web connector, right, we work with any version of the web connector. So if you upgrade your QuickBooks, you just got to download a new QWC file when you get your new web connector that comes with your new QuickBooks. And yes. So short answer is yes with that. However, if you don't update your QuickBooks, okay, like the one I just ran was on 2017 QuickBooks, okay, and that's going to be not supported next year because they'll support current and 2 versions back. So they're going to eventually stop support of the web connector for 2017. Doesn't mean it doesn't work. However, you won't get support on it if anything breaks. So best to stay up to date with your QuickBooks. And we support whatever versions the web connector supports.
All right. Will it show in Zoho the invoice if the QuickBooks Online invoice has multiple subtotals and a grand total?
Multiple subtotals. Are those like line items? I mean, there aren't multiple grand totals in Zoho's invoice. So I don't know how that would happen in QuickBooks, but I think you might be talking about roll-up fields. Maybe you have one-time products and services and recurring, or maybe you separate products from services. Those are roll-ups, and if it's a field in QuickBooks, then we can map it to a field in Zoho, whether it's a standard field or a custom field.
Okay. How does Zoho CRM know if an estimate in QuickBooks is won or lost?
Let's see. There's no status of an estimate in QuickBooks, and I mean, you probably wouldn't be able to map that field if there is no status of a QuickBooks estimate. But I think there is, though, right? There's like whether it's been like declined or accepted or declined or canceled or converted to a sales order. Pretty sure there is.
Well, I'm not sure about this, but are you able to add custom fields to the estimates module in QuickBooks?
I think you can in some versions of QuickBooks. It's limited on how many you can add, but I'm pretty sure you can add custom fields to the estimates module of QuickBooks. I certainly know you can in Zoho.
Right. Okay, so I think the answer is if the standard field for won or lost does not exist, and you can add the custom field to QuickBooks, then yes, it's going to be possible in either that way or the other way.
Yeah, but I know Pro, Premier, and Enterprise each have different limits on how many custom fields you can have per module. So you might want to just check your version of QuickBooks.
Okay. For ease of pushing data between Zoho and QuickBooks, is it easier to use books just to show what happens in QuickBooks to Zoho users, such as invoicing, or is it easier to build custom programming for QuickBooks to Zoho?
Totally dependent on your business model and use case. Easier, if we're just talking about blanket statements, well, in general, it's easier to get information out of QuickBooks and put it into Zoho than writing data into QuickBooks, because the database of QuickBooks is so old that there's like, the customer name can only be like 30 characters or something. There's limits on that. There's limits on special characters. There are a lot of limitations of QuickBooks Desktop. So if you've adhered to the limitations of QuickBooks Desktop, Zoho is much more flexible and handling certain things. Plus, the other thing too is that Zoho has an actual workflow engine, and so you think, oh geez, I got something out of QuickBooks and put it into Zoho. That's like a create or edit, right? And so they can trigger workflows and stuff. So that's one use case, is like, hey, we have this old QuickBooks system that we don't want people to touch, and they want a boatload of money to add more users anyway. So let's get the information out of this desktop server somewhere and into the cloud where people can access it. So that's easier, and it's also a very common use case.
Cool, okay. Does it sync with Google Team Drive or only My Drive?
We work with both. We used to do the My Drive. Team Drive came out a couple years ago. We do Team Drive now too.
Nice, all right. Does creating a customer in QuickBooks create an account in Zoho and vice versa?
Yes, it can, yes.
Is there a demo or trial version available?
Well, there's this demo version. The trial version, do we still offer trials, Jeremy?
We do not, because it's
a lot of work to get it set up.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So we could do a demo for you. We could do a live demo with your use case, no problemo. No more, I don't think we're doing any more trials. I'd have to go look at our website. I honestly don't remember what we're doing anymore with those.
Yeah, that might be something we bring back in the future, but at the moment it's not a tenable solution for us.
We used to have a premium version, and that did not come with support, and ultimately that kind of came back to bite us in the tail, because we were expected to do support whether it's free or not. And Zoho changed some of their policies as well. So in terms of how our relationship with Zoho, so ultimately we had to get rid of that premium version.
Okay. Sections in QuickBooks. Oh, okay. Hold on a second. I want to make sure if this is oh, you know what? I think this is in something that you've already said, James. There are different sections in QuickBooks Online that give subtotals. So we can have, for example, 5 services plus a subtotal, and 5 products and then a subtotal. The 2 subtotals are added to the grand total for the invoice. Will that show in Zoho CRM if we're to sync from QuickBooks to Zoho?
As long as they're mappable fields, as long as they're in the QuickBooks database somewhere. If they just get rendered on the screen and they don't get cached in the database, then we can't map them. So I'd have to look in the mapping interface to see if it's possible. Probably best to do an assessment there.
Yeah, probably. You mentioned the Zoho API call limit. Could you share what that is?
Well, the last time I checked, on at least the V1 API, it was 500 per day per user, and that's aggregated among all users or shared among all users. So you got 10 users, you get 5,000 calls a day. I believe with version 2 of the API, it's based on concurrent connections. I'd have to go look at the documentation, so it's much less limiting. But unless you're really high volume, you're not going to hit those limits. Or if you have very few users right? And a high volume, you might hit the limits. Now, keep in mind, it's not just our integration that uses the API. This is among all of your integrations. Last time I checked, even the mobile app that Zoho offers uses their own API. So maybe that's changed, but you should keep track of your API usage. When you get close, Zoho will email you and say, hey, you're at like 80% of your usage for the day. So just something to be aware of. Zoho will also sell you more API calls.
Cool. Okay. Got a few more here. Is there an additional cost to sync between QuickBooks Desktop and Zoho CRM? Do I have to have Zoho Books in order to do the sync?
No, you don't have to. Sometimes it's a better use case to have it go through Zoho Books because there's an integration between CRM and Books that has some nice features in it. But it depends on your use case. Another reason you might is because Zoho Books has online payments, right, where you can send invoices and have them click a link and pay. So it just depends on your use case. If that's not important to you, then yeah, you don't necessarily need to.
Gotcha. And I think the first part of that question was really just comparing QuickBooks Online to QuickBooks Desktop. The pricing is the same, regardless of whether it's QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop. Okay. If we have a 3-user version of QuickBooks and 3 accounting employees using QuickBooks, will I need a 4th license for AgilitySync to work?
No, the web connector runs as a user, and that's what I meant by it running as an application there, is that one of those 3 users in your QuickBooks will be adding the web connector and running that, whether it's automatic or manual.
Okay. Is there a set limit on the number of custom fields mapped going into Zoho from QuickBooks?
The number of fields? I'm sure there is a limit, but I think QuickBooks will, there's only so many custom fields you can add. Zoho's limits are way higher on how many custom fields. It's like 300 per module. Usually someone has made a big mistake if they're mapping 300 fields. I don't know what the use case is, but there's a term called bastardizing your CRM, right? Where it's just a total mess. So you're gonna bastardize before you hit a 300 custom field limit. But and then QuickBooks, I think the limit on items is like 10 custom fields on items, right? So and the other modules as well, they're pretty limiting. So again, QuickBooks is way tighter than Zoho's limits.
Okay. How much is the cost of the payments extension?
So if you go on the annual, it's $500 per year. That includes deployment. And if you go on the monthly, it's $25 a month plus $995. $995 is a one-time deployment fee. Basically, all of our extensions are that. Our standard add-ons are that same price. So whether it's a custom module or the payments module or a historical data migration, that doesn't have an ongoing, just a one-time. All of those are considered add-ons, and they're basically that same price structure.
Okay. Would it be more cost-effective for me to switch from QuickBooks to Zoho Books and do a data migration in the long run?
The long run, yeah. I mean, eventually the monthly fee will catch up to I guess it depends on how much you're paying for Zoho Books, but if you're on Zoho One that includes Zoho Books, how many companies do you have? There's a variety of factors that go into the cost benefit there. But data migration from QuickBooks to Zoho Books, right? If you want to do it right, is expensive. So, and then there's the whole, part about it disrupting your operation and getting up to speed and all that. ERP migrations are like the most disruptive for your business and have a really high chance of failure. So that's why so many people, they know QuickBooks, right? You can easily find an accountant that knows QuickBooks. So that's why, so many people are just integrating with QuickBooks rather than fully migrating. And I'm not knocking Zoho Books, okay? I'm just telling you the reality is that it's expensive to migrate. So I don't know how many years it would take to catch up, but I'm sure you can do a cost benefit. I think your actual project there with your migration and all would be somewhere around $10,000. So it might be cheaper to integrate than migrate, at least in the short term.
Okay, just got one more here so far. What is the second year license cost on the annual plan?
Same. Yeah, we price it that. I mean, we basically don't get a return on our investment by including deployment until the end of the second year. So that's why we do that.
Great. Okay, that appears to be all the questions we have for now. If anyone else has any more, please speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'll end with this. We're a premium partner. We've been around for 7 years. AgilitySync has been around for 5 years. We continue to make improvements on it. We work with CRM and the finance platform. That's books, inventory, subscriptions, expense. We do also work with Zoho Creator. We have Field Tech, which is our creator platform, our creator application that we built on Zoho Creator. We do remind you we assist with deployment and training, US-based here in SoCal. Thank you for attending. If you do want to get an assessment, I'd strongly recommend it. Here's who to call.
Great. Yeah, guys, thank you again for taking the time to come to this, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.